live long and prosper. So in this video series, I'm going to be talking through the social justice elements of every episode of the original series of Star Trek. The thing that inspired this project was actually a Fox News article which argued that Star Trek has in some way betrayed its traditional commitment to sort of political neutrality or middle ground by embracing progressive politics. In this series, we're going to see that Star Trek has always embraced progressive politics, and it's always been aspirational for social justice in various senses. I am taking a broad perspective on social justice here, so that may include multiple different types of social justice, whether that's racial, whether that's economic, whether that's religious, whether that's abilities, gender and sexuality, anything broadly considered. I will go through every episode. Some of the episodes I will interview fellow Trekkies and talk with them about it. And then below, in the descriptions, I will give you additional information about the episodes, particularly their original air date, who wrote the screenplay, and who directed that episode. I also want to dedicate this series to my dad, Michael Allen Zapkin. He was an OG Trekkie from back in the day, and it was watching the original series with him that I came to love Star Trek. In this video, we're going to talk about the episode For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky, which again, I think is one of the greatest episode titles ever. So, in this episode, the Enterprise discovers an asteroid, but it's not really an asteroid. It's actually the Death Star. No, it's not the Death Star, but it is that same kind of thing where, like, this is an asteroid, but it's actually a spaceship. And what they find out is that there's a hollow shell around it, and then there's a planetoid inside it. They realize that this is a spaceship, that it is on a direct course somewhere, but it's heading for Darren 5, which is a planet with a large population, and this asteroid would otherwise crash into Darren 5, killing all the people there. So, while this is happening, McCoy has found out that he has a terminal disease, incurable terminal disease, and so that becomes his sort of bit here. Interestingly enough, while he says he has a year to live, he basically immediately starts being physically weakened, despite the fact that in previous episodes we've had no indication of this. So that's going on. But Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beam down under the core, or under the outer shell of the asteroid, onto the planetoid inside, and they are pretty much immediately attacked by the people of Yonada, who then sort of take them down underground to where the people of Yonada live. They learn from the High Priestess Natira that this is an entire culture, and they're in this sort of weird position where they find out that this is a civilization sort of run by the Oracle, which is some kind of computer program that tells the people of Yonada through the medium basically of Natira what to believe about the world, and is basically observing their every movement, every thought, to make sure that there's no sort of doubt, there's no heresy or anything like this. Kirk and Spock are primarily concerned with getting this asteroid, planetoid spaceship back on course to wherever it's supposed to go, rather than crashing into Darren 5, because if it's going to crash into Darren 5, then they have to destroy it, which means they have to genocide the people of Yonada, which they don't particularly want to do. Meanwhile, Natira and McCoy have fallen in love with one another, and McCoy decides that he's going to stay and join the people of Yonada to live out the last year of his life. Once he is inducted as one of the people of Yonada, he's shown Book of Yonada, which basically has all the knowledge that the people are going to need when they get to the planet they're supposed to get to. And so McCoy realizes that if Kirk and Spock can look at that book and can get access to it, then they will be able to figure out how to put this spaceship back on course. So McCoy calls them, but the problem is, in his forehead, he's had implanted the instrument of obedience, which basically punishes, the Oracle uses to punish him for trying to like interfere with the culture of Yonada. Kirk and Spock come down. They manage to convince Natira that things are not as they should be. They remove the instrument of obedience from McCoy and then from Natira. They manage to get to the book, open it up. Spock is able to go into the control room, basically, and they're like, yeah, okay, this was an easy fix. Like, we've got this. Asteroid's back on course. And then Spock is like, the ancestors of the people of Yonada they've got these great records of all their knowledge, including their advanced medical knowledge, which just so happens to have a cure for the incurable disease that McCoy has contracted. So McCoy is not going to die, which is great news, because then he can be in the rest of the series and movies beyond. But it also somewhat weirdly means that he's just, abandoning his wife, Natira. So that's, not fantastic. But they kind of agree, each of us has our place. Now that we've destroyed the power of the Oracle, basically Natira's like, I have to stay with my people, and I have to tell them the truth and, prep them for when we actually get to this planet. And McCoy's like, yeah, it's probably best if I just go back on the Enterprise and keep being the chief surgeon and whatnot. So that's where they end up. I think there's some fairly straightforward social justice things here, primarily in the figure of the Oracle and the role that it plays. It is a panoptic force, right? So Michel Foucault, who was this brilliant thinker, this brilliant philosopher, came up with this idea in his book Discipline and Punish of the panoptic consciousness. And this is based on a Jeremy Bentham invention of the panoptic prison, where basically the prison was built in a circle with all the cells facing in, and you had a tower in the middle with lights projecting out, so that prisoners could never tell whether or not they were being surveilled. And so they would have to behave constantly as though they were under direct, immediate scrutiny of the guards, but they would never actually know if anyone was in the tower. Foucault says this is how modern life functions, right? And this has gotten significantly, I think the book came out in 1984 or thereabouts. It comes out sometime in the 80s. And this has gotten significantly more true since then. The use of CCTV cameras, security cameras, just absolutely explodes in the 90s and the 2000s. With the advent of things like smartphones, people can be tracked continually wherever they are. Everything we do on the internet is observed and things like this. So the idea of the panopticon is basically that you as a subject live your life as though you are continually being surveilled, and so you police your own behavior in significant ways because you can never be sure that you are not being observed by the authorities or whatever it is. In For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky, we have the exact same thing going on. The oracle, through the instrument of obedience implanted in the forehead, is able to know what people are doing, know where they are, and Natira says it's able to know what people think. Now, the first real instance we get of this is when the old man comes in shortly. So Kirk, Spock, and McCoy have been electrocuted by the Oracle because, for some reason, it's like, before you can be our friends, you have to know what it means to be our enemies. So it electrocutes them, and then they're taken away and put in a room to recover. And this old man comes in, and he's like, when I was young, I climbed the mountains, even though it was forbidden, and I touched the sky. That's where the title comes from, that great line, "For the world is hollow and I have touched the sky." This old man tells them this story that he, maybe alone on this planet, knows that they're not looking at an actual sky. They're not looking at an atmosphere. What they're looking at is a shell of some kind. And as he's telling them this story, he does this over and over. He sort of twitches and puts his hand to his forehead where the instrument of obedience is implanted. And then as he's finishing telling them his story, he dies. He's killed by the Oracle for revealing this forbidden knowledge. And so that idea of the panopticon, of constantly being under surveillance, I mean, this old man has known since he was young, since he was maybe a teenager in his 20s. We don't really know for sure, but he's known for presumably decades. We don't know how long Yolandans live, but he's known for his entire adult life that the world they know, the world the people of Yolanda know, is not what they think it is. And he presumably has never been able to tell anyone that, because he knows that he will be punished for that knowledge. And that that idea of like self-policing and the ability, what it means to live your life under constant surveillance. Natira, we see the same thing when she even when she listens to Kirk. She initially is unwilling to accept what Kirk tells her when he explains, "You're on a spaceship." And it's off course. And the Oracle isn't, because she goes to the Oracle after she leaves Kirk. She's being punished while Kirk is revealing this to her. She goes to the Oracle, and what the Oracle says of her, the critique is not, "You believed this." The critique is, "You listened to this." So the Oracle punishes her not for her relative belief or unbelief. It punishes her for the willingness to listen to a different perspective. This is an absolutist, authoritarian panoptic system, and it requires self-policing. Natira initially says repeatedly, "I refuse to believe." She rejects the reality that Kirk tells her, and that is not sufficient for the Oracle. That is not sufficient self-policing for the Oracle.